We're here to sound an important warning to the American people about the health care consequences of what the Republicans are cooking up in Washington. I sit on the Help Committee. On the Help Committee, we actually have bipartisan work being done on health care. We're proving that you can do good things in health care on a bipartisan basis. But the leadership on the Republican side is not following that path. Instead, they're following a completely partisan, Republicans only, no Democrats allowed tax strategy that is an assault on American health care. It starts by running huge deficits. Deficits that are so big that by law they trigger mandatory cuts in Medicare and Medicaid. So they will immediately mandatory cut Medicare and Medicaid. Then, to support that, they had to pass a budget, and in the budget they built in $1 trillion in cuts to Medicaid, $400+ billion in cuts to Medicare. And if that's not enough, we've seen this show before. They run up big deficits to finance tax cuts for very wealthy people, and then they come back and they say, oh, we are shocked at the deficits we have run up. Now we have to be fiscally sensible and cut Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security. We have played this game before. We know how this movie ends. So in all those ways, it's an assault on American health care. And if that weren't enough, they add stripping out the deduction that so many Americans claim for medical expense. I can assure you, there are families in Rhode Island who only keep their financial head above water because they can deduct the expense for family members who have expensive critical health care needs. That's the difference between being solvent and just making it and financial collapse, financial calamity. And they're stripping it away. They're stripping it away so that billionaire hedge fund managers can still pay a lower rate than truck drivers. It just doesn't make any sense at all. And the attack on health care is something we're going to fight very hard to stop. And as Jack said, if we can stop their partisan, Republican-only effort on health care, there's another road. We're not saying no, we're saying let's work together. And the Help Committee work, bipartisan work, proves that that can be done. Let me make one last point that is very specific to Rhode Island, because this bill is really hard for Rhode Island. First of all, it also takes away the property and local tax deduction. And in Rhode Island, that takes a big tax benefit away from a lot of working families. Second, that big deficit will flow through to state tax revenues. There'll be a cut in state tax revenues because federal tax revenues go down. And yet, we can't finance the state tax revenue drop with a deficit. We can't run deficits constitutionally. So we'll either have to cut services to people or raise taxes. In that sense, this could prove to be a Rhode Island tax hike to pay for a federal tax cut that goes to help the wealthiest Americans. The housing market is important to Rhode Island, and this clobbers the housing market, which is why the realtors and the home builders have come out so strongly against it. And last of all, when I first was courting my dear bride, she was a grad student. And I think everybody who knows anybody who's been a grad student, they call them starving grad students for a reason. They don't get paid a lot. They work very hard. They may get little stipends for helping to teach, and sometimes they get some of their tuition fees waived because they're working in the university. This bill will tax the waiver. They're protecting millionaires and billionaires by going after grad students. That's what we're up against. So this is a very important fight. We intend to win it. And when we do, we intend to welcome our Republican comrades with open arms into a bipartisan process that makes our tax system fairer and smarter and better for average Americans. So thank you very much to Jim Nyberg for his leadership with Leading Age RI. Thank you very much to Edward Herrmann for the wonderful welcome we're having here at Scandinavian Communities. And thank you so much to the leader of our delegation who does so much for Rhode Island, the terrific and wonderful Jack Reed.